Partner with eMarketer on data-driven marketing materials. Our custom reports give eMarketer Media Solutions clients the opportunity to generate new category insights through original surveys and analysis. Visit eMarketer.com/advertise to learn more. Hello, everyone, and thanks for hanging out with us for the Behind the Numbers weekly listen and eMarketer podcast. This is the Friday show that hates when people say take care. You know why? That's what they tell each other on Jurassic Park. It's too intense.
I've told people to take care thousands of times, and they've never been attacked by a dinosaur after.
That's my thinking, is are there dinosaurs outside? Because if I get eaten by a raptor, then someone will be like, warned him.
Blake, you meant they've never been attacked by dinosaurs yet.
Just say goodbye, all right?
Risks.
It's freaking me out.
I think take care is supposed to be it's a term of endearment. Like, I care about you. I want you to take care of yourself.
I'm just going to assume that. Maybe not about you, Suzy. Anyway.
So much to say, and yet we only have 30 minutes.
Johnson,
so
in today's show. Trying to understand what's going on with consumer sentiment. Is the era of one-stop grocery shopping over? How much will AI move the creativity needle out of 10? What do we make of this digital twin concept? And a huge Olympic milestone. Join me for this episode. We have three people. Let's meet them. All are based in and around the New York area. We start with our Vice President of Content covering digital advertising, media, and technology. It's Paul Verna.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, fella. We also have our Senior Analyst on the Retail and E-commerce desk, Blake Droesch.
Hello, everyone.
And finally, we have our Vice President of Content who heads up our Retail and E-commerce desk. It's Suzy Davidkhanian.
Hi, everyone.
What do we have in store for you? 3 segments, a story, a game, and some trivia. Let's do it. We start, of course, with the story of the week. All right, folks, we start with a story about consumer sentiment. So, storm clouds cast a shadow over the US economy, making it harder to convince consumers to spend. This was the title of an article written by our retail briefings analyst, Zach Stambor. He thinks that whilst consumers have been remarkably resilient over the past few years, they may be reaching their limits. A couple of signals is evidence to that. One, the labour market is weakening, he writes. Unemployment rising to 4.3% in July. That's over half a point higher than it was in January and the highest since October 2021. Signal 2, consumers are struggling to pay off their credit card debt. The share of past due credit card balances reached the highest level since the Philadelphia Federal Reserve began tracking them in 2012. And Signal 3, forecasts trending down. The Atlanta Fed revised both Q3 GDP growth and consumer spending down a bit. However, on the glass half full side of things, Matt Ott of the Associated Press notes that the Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index that measures Americans' assessment of current economic conditions and their outlook for the next 6 months rose to 100 points in July from 98 in June. There's Market Watch articles about how things are actually better than people think. Blake, we'll start with you. Where do you land on the state of consumer sentiment at the moment?
I think, the numbers that we're going to see, come out over the coming days are going to say a lot about, what's happening, particularly with consumer spending. So I think on August 15th, we will get fresh numbers for retail sales in the U.S. And that's also the day that Walmart is going to report its earnings. So that's kind of always a good bellwether of sort of the spending confidence that consumers have. And then, of course, there's the inflation index, which I believe is going to come out around the same time. I think, part of what we're seeing happen now is a little bit by design because, keep in mind that, the Fed wants to get those inflation numbers really low in order for that to happen. Consumer spending is going to need to cool down a little bit. I think the question is, are there outside factors, mainly the unemployment rate, that are sort of coming into the mix at the wrong time that is going to have an outsized impact on softening the retail market? And if that's the case, I think that, retailers are going to be in for a pretty tough rest of the year. But I think it's still maybe a little bit too early to be, sounding the alarm. It'll be really interesting to see sort of what we get from the big numbers that come out this month that really tell us what happened in July.
Yeah. Zach made a really good point in his piece, which just sounds very simplistic, but I think he hits the nail on the head. He says consumers just don't feel great. And consumer confidence, according to key indices, one from the Consumer Confidence Board, the other from the University of Michigan, are both, I think this is such an important point, below pre-pandemic levels by a lot. Consumer confidence is 25% below its February 2020 peak, according to the Conference Board, and the University of Michigan says it's down by over 30% from its pre-pandemic levels. And I think part of that reason why it's down so much is because we're living in a much more expensive world. Grocery inflation eased to 1% in June's CPI report, but food prices are 25% higher than in 2019. So it feels, Paul, like there's a bit of cognitive dissonance here, which is I look at the unemployment rate, it's around 4%. That seems pretty decent, even if it ticked up a tiny bit. I'm looking at inflation, it's around 3%. That's down from the heights of 9 2 summers ago. And I'm looking at GDP growth, and Q2 was pretty damn good. However, I'm living in a much more expensive world, and so people are having to reckon with these different set of metrics, which are kind of giving them different messages.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. And when we talk about sentiment and confidence, those are soft terms. So if you juxtapose them with hard statistics, the two don't always match. So when you look at the statistics, the economy has been doing quite well. It's definitely been jolted over the past week or so. But in general, inflation has been trending down. The unemployment rate has been very low. And a lot of the numbers just add up to a relatively strong economy, certainly stronger than what I think a lot of economists predicted, which was a full-blown recession in the US, which we haven't really seen. But it's true when you look at your own grocery bill, which is one of the biggest things you spend money on, and it's a very present thing in people's lives. If those prices have gone up by as much as they have, then none of the other stuff matters. What you're going to feel is what that bill actually looks like on your credit card or in your bank account. And yeah, I mean, anecdotally, I find that it's not just groceries, but like you go to a restaurant and those prices have gone up by way more than any of the inflation indexes. I personally think a lot of it is gouging. I think a lot of it is restaurants and grocery chains, which I understand that they have a lot of pressures that they're under. So I'm not saying that they're, like rolling in it and just ripping off consumers. But I think there's been a lot of opportunism with many of those companies just taking the idea that there's inflation and using it to justify price increases that in some cases are gratuitous.
You're not the only one. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, and Chair Lena Khan are proposing an investigation into grocery pricing to determine why prices and profits remain so high, even as costs appear to have come down. Last part of that was a quote. So it seems like that, maybe there is a bit of smoke here and people want to investigate it a bit more. Suzy, how about you? I mean, which numbers are you paying closest attention to, and where do you land on this kind of glass half full, glass half empty consumer sentiment?
So I think everybody knows I'm usually glass half full, but in this instance, I think it's just a slow burn. And I think it's impossible to look at any one item alone, and that some of the sentiment or consumer confidence numbers sort of lag behind some of the more important numbers in the US. A lot of the economy is driven by spend. However, people aren't saving as much as they were before, and people are spending more on credit. And to Paul and Blake's point, what you're seeing as your share of wallet, because rent too has gone up, right? At least on the East Coast, West Coast. So all of the big expenses keep ticking up, but your paycheck is not quite keeping up and your savings rate isn't keeping up, and now you're spending more on your credit card and the APR rates are going to go up probably, or it's going to cost you more to spend money than it did before. So everything is kind of going up. So I am worried, but I'm also worried about thinking about it with one particular number in mind, and it's truly looking at it as a whole landscape that is really helpful. And so to your original point around the headlines are so mixed. This week there's been a lot happening this week, so it's really hard for a consumer to know what they should be doing.
Paul, you were noting the stock market this week kind of been a bit crazy. It has, but if you look in May, it went up and down by as much as it has in this most recently. So we see those fluctuations. We don't see them as quickly as we saw this week. But yeah, it depends on whatever article you read will kind of determine how you feel about the state of the economy. Dana Peterson, the Conference Board's chief economist, thinks it's all about two things, prices and interest rates at the moment, saying even though consumers remain relatively positive about the labour market, they still appear to be concerned about elevated prices and interest rates and uncertainty about the future.
And if you think about what they have control over, consumers, it's where they're spending, if they can trade down and find value in things, and they're going to do it. And we didn't talk about the bifurcated customer, but I think we're also seeing that in terms of like higher end, lower end. We're going to see different stories pop up.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's where we'll leave the story of the week. Let's move now, folks, to the game of the week. Today's game, the Super Duper game.
Make me laugh. There's no game. There are no points.
There is a game.
There are no points, though.
Are there winners or losers in this game? Does somebody win?
Yeah.
No.
What do you mean? No, as always.
Okay.
Suzy doesn't think there's a game when she loses, and then
No,
when she
I don't
wins.
think there's a game when there are no rules.
There are rules. Don't talk over me. Is the name. Remain wrong. How does the game work? 3 rounds. Today we have fill in the blank, move the needle, and the random scale. Oh, mysterious. The better the answers, the more points you get. Round 1. We start with Paul, playing fill in the blank, where folks do that. The era of one-stop grocery shopping is over. Americans are dividing their food shopping among more stores to save money, writes Rachel Wolf of the Wall Street Journal. The evidence, she notes, 1, grocery shoppers are making 8% more trips than they did last year, according to Alex Partners, and buying fewer items at each stop. Number 2, folks bought groceries from an average of nearly 21 different retailers from March 2023 and February 2024, according to Numerator. That's up from 17 retailers the same period 4 years ago, from 17 to 21. And number 3, in addition to visiting more stores, shoppers are also traveling to cheaper zip codes to shop. Fill in the blank, Paul. The idea that the era of one-stop grocery shopping is over is blank.
It is definitely true until it returns again in a few years.
Oh, tell me.
There's a good reason why this is happening now. I think we talked about this price inflation, and as a reaction to that, people are seeking out better deals, which they always generally do. But there are also times when people feel more flush or feel like the cost of buying everything in one place outweighs the inconvenience of making several trips and keeping track of what, where you might save 20 cents on an item. So I think right now the pendulum has swung more toward the budget conscious side, but there's going to be a time when convenience is going to outweigh that. Mark my words, we can come back in 2, 3, 4 years and do another episode, and I'll dig up the transcript to this one and I'll say, I told you so.
Mark my words, Paul was surprisingly threatening. Blake.
That's how I roll.
Like the take care.
Exactly.
Like
take care,
a
Marcus.
Disney villain.
Yeah, take care, Marcus.
Enough. We talked about this. What's out there? Blake, you're up.
His demeanor was so kind, but it was so
very cutting. Very cutting.
I would say that it is permanent because I think what we're seeing is that diversification of grocery options on both the lower end and the higher end. take. There are a lot of consumers that, given the economic climate, have sought out and are patronizing dollar stores and discount grocers. And we've seen a lot of those types of chains grow. They're building more stores. And I think that they're going to remain popular in the future because, as we've seen, once folks get used to shopping for lower cost goods, they typically don't revert behavior when the economy improves. But even if they do, there's also this growing trend of specialty grocery stores, organic foods, things of that nature. Whereas, if in a better economic condition, there's an evolving market on that end as well. So I think, yes, it's true, but just for a multitude of reasons.
Suzy.
My word was obvious for the blank. Yes, it's obvious that the one-stop shops are like one shopping trip for everything you need is over unless it's back to school, because you do need the convenience, right? But on a general grocery shopping trip, I think people are very accustomed to certain private labels. Like people will go to Trader Joe's for 3 items. I think it's behavior people were already doing, right? And then they go to the cheesemonger and the meat shop. And if you think about in Europe and all those markets where there's a fish, even in some of the suburbs where they have like Sunday farmers market, right? Like,
where do you live? 1947.
There is a cheesemonger at Grand Central.
Charming world that you live in.
There is absolutely a cheesemonger at Grand Central. But all this to say, I think during COVID, everybody did the one-stop shop because they didn't have a choice. I think if they were thinking about budgets and value, they wouldn't be driving because gas is expensive. I just think it's a sticker shock. And so people have to give themselves an excuse as to why they're going to different places. But it's truly because they're looking for the best and freshest items for whatever it is and the brands that they love. And as Blake noted, there are so many more retailers and more options and more retailers are developing private label gamuts. And so it's very normal that by default, you go to the private label you love, which is a retailer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, private labels, one way folks are saving money. But high shares of consumers are adopting various cost-saving measures across the board. If you look at this chart, it shows high rates of adoption of various cost-saving measures. We've got number one is saving money for looking for items on sale, according to Civic Science, ahead of buying a store brand. And then this other research from Ipsos shows that buying brands on sale is again the number one way consumers try to get around inflation before buying fewer products overall. All right, folks, let's move to round 2. And it's move the needle. Folks, tell me how much this story will move the needle out of 10. Can an AI chatbot make a person more creative? Research shows it can boost creativity for some, but at a cost, writes Jeff Blumfield of NPR. According to a recent study published in the journal Science Advances, stories written with AI help were both more novel, meaning original, and useful, meaning high enough quality to be published. Researchers from the University College London and the University of Exeter noted that writers who had access to one AI idea did better than those who didn't. But those who had access to 5 AI ideas saw the biggest boost, with their stories judged by a group of 600 evaluators seen as around 8% more novel than humans on their own and 9% more useful. But the study also notes that whilst the chatbot made each individual more creative, it made the group that had AI help collectively less creative, creating a situation where people benefit individually, but the group suffers. Let's start with Blake from Move the Needle. How much will AI move the creativity needle out of 10?
Well, I think it depends on what your definition of creativity is. If you're talking about basically like low stakes, like performance advertising creative, then, probably significantly, I'd give it about like a 7. But in terms of like creativity and actual like, artistic expression, 0. Because, this study basically takes an extremely low bar of people who don't identify themselves as writers and gives them, a prompt to write something, which is something that is, very difficult and not, inherently natural to a lot of people. So yes, of course, AI is going to help something go from, really bad to maybe not quite as bad because there's a little bit of aiding there. But I think, this particular study, it's very interesting. So you could go read more about it. But I don't think it really serves as any type of representation on how AI can help either type of creativity.
Very good. Suzy.
So I agree that the definition of creativity is really important. I, though, gave it a 5, just a regular in the middle, because it just depends on who we're talking about. Is it helping some? Maybe, yeah, we saw in the study. Is it helping the greater good? Probably not yet. I think it's because there's just not enough information that AI is scraping from. And I didn't really think about this, but it kind of makes sense. Like everything is being remixed. So at some point, it's just going to be like one idea that's going to shuffle around. And so then we're going to lose creativity. So today, I think it's probably helpful overall, but still giving it a 5.
Paul.
Well, since I already revealed myself as someone who is threatening, I'm now going to continue on that path and be judgmental here and say that for people who using AI, if using AI makes them more creative, then maybe they're not that creative in the first place, or they produce work that's sort of, borderline quality work, and the AI can elevate that. But AI, by definition, or by its nature, is derivative. So it's not going to really produce original work. When I think of creativity, I think of originality. So it really does come down to, how do you define creativity? Do you define it as just simply creating something that gets a job done, which is how I think this study has defined it? In that case, yes, I think AI is going to accelerate that. But if you define it as an idea that actually speaks to people and that's going to have lasting impact and that may influence other people, that's a much higher bar. And I don't think AI is very good at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A big question here, I think, is what's the goal of using a chatbot? And Annalee Newitz, a science fiction author and journalist, I believe was quoted in this piece, said creative writing is, quote, humans communicating with other humans. Even if something is badly written, even if it's not very creative, if it's written by a human, then it's fulfilling its purpose. So, a lot of different ways to interpret this question. Some fantastic answers, folks. Let's move to the third and final round. We have the random scale, where folks have to tell me about the chances of something happening using the random scale. Today, we're talking about Meta, letting people create AI versions of themselves. There's a story from Alex Heath of The Verge. It's Meta's new AI studio lets Americans create AI versions of themselves or agent or assistant in Instagram, WhatsApp, Messenger, and on the web. Mr. Heath explains that the pitch here is creators and business owners will use these AI profiles to talk to their followers on their behalf. US Instagram users can access AI Studio via its site or by starting a new AI chat directly in Instagram. Folks can also try out AI characters that other people have made. Meta says that AI profiles are clearly labeled wherever they appear. The random scale today is, what do you make of this digital twin concept, creating an AI version of yourself? Your possible choices on today's scale are, first of all, it will take some time, but folks will slowly but surely start to adopt this, or this is a terrible idea. Suzy.
So I don't think those choices were all inclusive. So I'm just adding, It's like, it's already happening in different ways, right? So Roblox had the skins for your avatar, right? And then there's like the Bitmoji. Remember the Bitmoji app where you could make yourself? Instagram, Meta, all of these guys, that suite of brands tried with stars already, right? They were piloting with actors and actresses to do, but not with their voice because they didn't want there to be confusion. So it's already happening. There are a lot of hiccups before it becomes everywhere all the time with everybody's acceptance, like hallucinations. And will the chatbot give me wrong information, or will it tell me to do something that is really bad, or will it give me advice that is actually very singular? We just talked about how it's a remix of data. So I think it's going to be on steroids at some point, but today it's sort of like just starting out.
Okay, nothing you said was even remotely close to the scale. Didn't even attempt to answer the question.
I did. It's like
the judges have made a note. Don't worry.
It's been noted. That will at some point by default be accepted.
Let me check the scale. Not there. Okay.
Suzy, you can still win in my dreams.
Thank you. I did already, actually.
The only
As
place
did the
where
Armenian
you have a
Olympic.
chance. Congratulations to them.
Thank you.
I'm going to go with option A. I think people will adopt this. And, having been threatening and judgmental, now I'm going to reveal myself as arrogant and say that I already have a digital butler, so I'm way ahead of the game.
He's not digital.
He is now. I just decided that. I'm also going to be cynical about this and say that the reason this is going to happen is so that Meta and other platforms that encourage and provide the tools for people to basically clone themselves, they're going to do it so that they gain more users, because it's just basically going to double the user base.
Do they count?
That's so funny.
Maybe.
I mean, they'll make a count. They make the rules, right?
Yeah. Business accounts counts. And if you have more than one account as an individual, that counts. So maybe.
Yeah. Mark
but
my
you're
words.
using it for different purposes. The chatbots are different.
It doesn't matter.
It's like an extension.
They're still going to count it. They're still going to count it as two separate accounts.
They'll charge you more.
You're up. You're up. Blake, you're up now.
Thanks, Marcus. I'm going to go with this is a terrible idea and it will not take off. I just don't see the use case for it. I don't see how the AI is ever going to get so advanced that it can accurately reflect, the cadence of all of these individual users. I mean, maybe some of the largest, most, public accounts, sure. But, for it to be able to scale, it's going to have to sort of adopt the personality of accounts that it really doesn't know that much about. And that sort of leaves the other side of it just being basically a useful chatbot helper tool for brands and otherwise. But I don't really see how that's any different between, just using some sort of generative AI, fact-finding functionality. It doesn't need to be, this whole idea of branding it as a user clone doesn't really make any sense to me.
Yeah, a great point. Others already offer this. Character.ai, Replica. They offer designed chatbots that people talk to. But yeah, will this help this concept catch on? We shall see. All right, folks, we count the scores.
There are no scores.
There are scores.
Come on.
Suzy came in last place.
Obviously.
Paul second. Blake is this week's winner of the Game of the Week. Congratulations to you.
Thanks.
You get the championship belt.
I do think that even though I am the most polite, I also have the best answers.
Nice try.
They were very concise, thoughtful, intelligent, very clear, direct. So I would like to, just congratulate myself on the win. That's all I've got. Thanks, Marcus.
You're welcome.
You guys are so annoying.
It's very real. Well, let's go to the replay booth. Stuart, who runs the team up in the replay booth, what did you think of the scoring today?
Well, let me take a look at the official scoreboard and the score card, because we do keep score.
That's what Stuart does during the episode.
I'm going to cross-reference that with the actual rules, and I will confirm that Blake is the winner.
Blake is the winner. I had my
Congratulations,
Blake. Feeling, Suzy.
Thank you.
So rude.
Suzy, since it's the Olympics, let's pretend you got bronze.
I did get
also
bronze.
known as last place. Let's
Third.
move on.
No,
Congratulations
it's
to
third.
Blake. He wins the championship belt, the Game of the Week. Let's move to dinner party data. This is the part of the
It's
show
an
where we tell you
AI
about the most
championship
interesting
belt.
thing we've learned this week. Let's start with Blake.
So I learned that Michelangelo wasn't originally chosen to paint the Sistine
Be one of the
Chapel.
first four turtles. Oh, sorry.
Did you know this?
No.
Yeah. So
He was someone's second choice?
yeah, he was. So at the time of Michelangelo's rise, it was actually the painter Raphael who was chosen by Pope Julius II to work on the Sistine Chapel.
No, it's a bit
But
of a turtle.
there was a bit of a rivalry going on between Michelangelo and Raphael, because Michelangelo's fame was growing, and he was making a lot of money from all of these commissions, and he was stealing some of Raphael's business. So Raphael basically convinced the Pope to hire Michelangelo instead, hoping to prove that Michelangelo couldn't really paint and that he was limited to just being a sculptor. But obviously his plan backfired when Michelangelo obviously completed the Sistine Chapel.
The whole time I was just thinking about the Ninja Turtles. Anyone else?
Well, you guys just the moral
thought.
of the lesson is I'm Michelangelo of the Weekly Listen, and that
I'd be Leonardo.
you could try really hard to
be Donatello.
paint the Sistine Chapel, but I'm the one painting.
Suzy can be Raphael. Yeah, the
No,
one
I
who
want to be a
nearly got
girl
the gig.
turtle.
Oh, all right. We'll figure something else out.
Thank you. With the dress.
Paul, you're up.
All right. So my dinner party data is dinner party trivia today. And we're going to do rapid fire 5 very quick trivia questions about the Olympics. You ready?
Yes.
Where were the first Olympic Games hosted back in 776 BC? And I remember because I was there.
Olympia.
Marathon.
Suzy?
I was going to say
Rapid
Greece.
fire, Suzy.
Greece. You guys took my answers.
Well, I meant what city?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Specifically.
Olympia.
Very good.
I mean, we slack the answers
Sorry, go on,
then.
Paul.
So the the Michelangelo of the Weekly Listen gets it wrong by saying marathon. Good try.
I have to mix it up.
Marathon's a really good restaurant in Montreal. Greek restaurant. It's one of my
There you go.
favorites.
The first modern day Olympics Games were held in 1896 in what Greek city?
Athens.
Yeah,
Very
even
good.
I do that
Okay.
one.
What was the first U.S. city to host the Olympics?
LA.
I agree.
Michelangelo, you have an answer?
Paris, Texas.
You're all wrong. St. Louis.
Oh, really?
I was
And this
closest.
I guarantee that no one's going to get this one.
Oh.
Who is the oldest
that
male
was-
athlete or the oldest athlete, period, to win an Olympic gold medal?
47.
Was it this year? No, who? It's
Who?
one of the swimmers.
47 still. Michael Phelps.
No.
Michael Johnson.
Okay. Michelangelo?
Larry Bird.
Michael Angelo.
No, I know. It's the tennis player, Djokovic.
Djokovic.
Sorry.
Well, you're all wrong because
Oh.
he was 72 years old, and it was
What?
Sweden's Oscar Swan who took gold for shooting
Curling?
in 1920.
Wow.
Oh,
All right,
sir.
last question.
Okay.
True or false? In ancient Greek times, Olympic athletes competed naked.
True.
Maybe.
We have 2 trues and a maybe.
Yeah, maybe. What is that? A half point
Yeah,
investment?
Yes.
it is true.
Oh,
It is true.
Just come
'Cause
in,
they were all
come in
men.
saying true. Wait 1 second, Suzy. True. All right, got that in. Very nice, Paul. I feel like I won that one. We don't have
Nice
time to
try.
count the scores. Just assume I'm right. Suzy, you're up.
So I came across this very cool A/B Tasty and Pollfish survey/report on decoding online shopping. And I'm not sure how they did this, but they have segmented shoppers into 5 categories. Confident, knows what they want, review-oriented, comparison-oriented, detail-oriented, and speedy, just wants to check out as fast as possible. So I was wondering, which do you fall under? How would you self-rate?
I feel like I'm all of those things at any
Depends on the day.
any
Yeah.
given time. So I
Same.
don't understand how they would possibly be able to classify this.
Well, it was in the 3 months. Like you had to make a shopping trip and purchase in the last 3 months. So maybe it was based on what you bought last in those 3 months. 28% say they're confident and only 10% worry about speedy checkout. But that might be because one of the biggest factors influencing when you leave with something in your cart without making a purchase, 1 in 3, do you know what it is? The payment method that you wanted to use is not accepted.
Wow. 1 in 3.
It's huge, right? Now this was a global, but that's the overarching global number. There are different numbers depending on the countries. And what frustrated most, again, globally for online shopping, slow loading website number 1 for the globe.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, that one makes sense. Very good. All right, folks, I got one for you real quick. As I said before, a huge Olympic milestone. For the first time ever, an Olympic Games has achieved gender equality. So Pallavi Rao of Visual Capitalist was noting half of all competing athletes at Paris 2024 are women, according to the International Olympic Committee. In the very first Olympics, modern Olympics, 1896, in the very first one, women weren't allowed to compete. At the next Olympics in Paris in 1900, they were, but just 22 women took part in 5 sports: tennis, sailing, croquet, equestrian, and golf, representing 2% of the entire competition. Elena de Portelet, a sailor representing Switzerland, became the first woman Olympic champion.
That was on my trivia question list, by the way.
Really?
Yep.
Damn it, Paul. Where was that earlier?
I just had a sense that you were going to bring it up, so I left it to you.
In 1960,
sort of like Raphael and Michelangelo.
Women accounted for just 10% of all athletes. So 2% in 1900, 10% in 1960. 30 years later, at the end of the 80s, it reached a quarter of athletes, 1/3 by 96, and now 50% at the 2024 Paris Games. However, there's work to be done. Mr. Rao notes that beyond just the competition, women are still underrepresented on the coaching and refereeing side, pointing out that only 5 sports, tennis, triathlon, canoeing, sailing, and hockey, have achieved gender parity in their judges.
And we won't even talk about the money because we're definitely not there yet.
Yep, so there's still work to be done, as there always is. That's all we have time for this episode. Thank you so much to my guests for hanging out with me today. Thank you, of course, to Suzy.
Thanks for having me.
She gets the bronze. Thank you to Paul.
Thank you.
A solid silver. That took a little bit long for you to say thank you. Don't appreciate that. And thank you to Blake.
That's
who wins the gold.
When you introduced Suzy, you said the bronze before you let her say thank you. So I was waiting for the silver. That's why I hesitated.
I prefer Suzy's excuse, chatbot Paul. Blake, congratulations. You get the gold.
Thanks, Marcus. Take care.
Yes, indeed.
That was awesome.
Well played. Thank you to Victoria, who edits the show. Stuart runs the team. Sophie does our social media. Lance does our video podcast. Thanks to everyone for listening in. We hope, of course, to see you on Monday for the Behind the Numbers Daily and eMarketer podcast. Happiest of weekends.